Welcome back to the Fit for Fitness podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Davis, and today we have on an incredible guest, Brad Jensen, aka the Sober Bodybuilder. He's the owner of Key Nutrition, and he's the founder of the Next Level Experience. And his story is just amazing, and we'll hear a little bit about that on the podcast. But also, I wanted to talk to him about some of the principles that he uses to create success in all of his programs for everyone that he's working with. And he does just that. So if you're ready for incredible value, stay tuned. All right. So first of all, Brad, I just want to thank you for being on. I really appreciate your time, and I'm look forward to hearing your perspective kind of on a number of matters. So,
Dude, good to see you again, brother. It's been fun to follow you on social. You got some good content, by the way.
I appreciate that.
Dude, and your gym is just sick. Can we just acknowledge, like, it's like a club in there? It's like purple lights. It's man, that place is dope. Is that how you, like, when you train people, is it like that color?
It's that color all the time.
Dude, I love it, bro. That's the vibe, man.
Yeah. Some people think it's like, it gives Miami Vice. Some people are like, I mean, it's a number of things. So, it all kind of happened by accident. It mainly happened because the whole place looked very sterile. And so I just didn't want it to look like that, because we took over people who were training Parkinson's patients. And during COVID, they shut down. So they wanted to get out of their lease. And then I came in to take over. And then they kind of left a little bit of stuff, and it was just very officey. And this building's very strange as well. It's like used to be a hotel, and then it was like an old people's home, and so this was like the old people's like rec room, and so there's like a bookcase. It was a
whole vibe, but the other way.
Yeah.
For any of my listeners, if when I post this, you guys are listed, you gotta go check out his gym. It's sick. That's where I want to go train. I was like, I don't know if he just does this for the content or if that's
like that.
It's a total Miami Vice vibe.
Yeah, next time you're up here, man, you should come check it out.
Yeah, man, absolutely, would love that.
Cool. So, you wear like a number of hats. Like, you are a mentor, you're a business owner, you're a father, you're a speaker, you're a content creator, and you're able to deliver value on like all of those fronts. And I know that a lot of what you do is share your story. But today I actually really wanted to like pick your brain on what you feel is kind of valuable in terms of like, when I'm sure there are some similarities when people come in contact with you with like some of like foundation setting in terms of like how you go about the coaching process or how you're like managing someone. So I was wondering if there are like really important principles for you, like when people get started at like the ground level with you, be it content or speaking or any of that stuff.
Good question. You mean just as far as so just some fundamental principles across the board that I try to implement? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Sure, if there are, and if they're not, and you approach all these like differently, like how would you kind of distinguish which ones are like, okay, these need this, and over here when I'm doing, speaking, they need this, like, but my clients need this to start?
It's a very good question. I've never been asked that, and now I'm thinking in my head. That's always a good, when you got someone thinking, that's good. It is interesting because, I think, at different times, and while I don't nutrition coach as much anymore, I'm kind of like Cody. We still have a hard time like exiting all the way out of it. I think I'm still doing it a touch more than him. I don't know though. I haven't checked in with him for a minute on it, but it's interesting. Like in one given week, not too long ago, I took on a nutrition client, but it was a referral of one of my longtime clients. They're like, hey, listen, will you take this person? I said, sure. So I started them. I started a mentor client. And I spoke just on a Zoom thing, but to a corporation of about 200 people, all like within, I think, the same 24 hours. And, for me going into it, as far as how I approach it is, how can I give the most value to these people, no matter what it is, no matter what situation. And I think it is interesting because when it comes to a nutrition client, and let's say a mentor client for business, there are different ways I approach it because I believe there's no cookie cutter thing, right? But some fundamental principles of like, hey, listen, because I'll work with some like high level CEOs, and then even like, people for business or content stuff, they might be, in charge of 6 of their own coaches at their company. And it's like kind of just getting them to be like, hey, listen, man, like, I just need you to take the hat off right now and just be the student and listen to me. And like, in 2 days, when I hop on a call with my mentor, I got to take my hat off and be like, I'm here to learn and be the student. And so I think just always being humble and being willing to learn, even when I go speak to people, just, ask them to try to have an open mind for what I'm going to share. And I think just a level of humility, trying to instill that in people from the beginning. And especially because I do work with a lot of people who might be in charge in their own life in business, or, and that's usually what it is, like in their particular business. It's like, hey, listen, she need you to listen to me. And like, I'm going to do the same for my mentor. So just a level of trust. And, that's a good question, man. I wish I had more of a system, but every client is so different from nutrition. And I know you know this with training. It's like, I mean, it could be totally different. I've trained 2 sisters back when I used to train people for show preps, and they were identical twins, and they had 2 totally different plans. And they'd be like, "Why does she get to do this and I don't?" And I'm like, "Because you guys are 2 different people." She's like, "But we're twins." And so I think even as a coach on your end, always making sure that, I just think this is why a true connection-based model is so important. Just getting to know people and really getting to know even their personality type and what's going to work for them and not work for them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think just instilling a level of humility and being willing to learn and open-minded. Like, open-mindedness is, like, if you can stay open-minded, man, possibilities are unlimited. But it's the closed-minded approach, or I know this already, or, that I think shortchanges a lot of people.
So for the people that are coming in and you are presenting them with like, okay, guys, like I have something for you here. Like, I'd really like you to just kind of like have an open mind to this. When you present it that way, do you feel like that automatically gets a little bit more trust and a little bit more buy-in versus like, hey, I'm just going to like shove some shit down your throat?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I think so. And that was advice given to me by someone who's done much bigger things in this industry. It was a good friend of mine now by the name of Jordan Syatt. And Jordan said, he was like, dude, anytime I go speak, I just like, hey, listen, even if you've heard me speak 40 times, I just ask that you come in and just say, hey, maybe there's something new I can learn. Like, even if you don't agree with me on some things, keep listening, because there might be something you do agree on. And he said, in fact, I hope you don't agree with everything I say right off the bat. And if by the end of it, you're like, hey, that point of view makes sense, cool. And if not, that's okay too, as long as you stayed open-minded. And I think that, man, I talk to people who follow people on social. They'll say one thing that they disagree with. They're like, oh, I'm not following that dude anymore. I'm like, he has a lot of good stuff to say. Or I can't believe you follow so-and-so. He said this. I'm like, yeah, I didn't agree with him on that, but I do learn a lot, because I just try to be like, okay, I'm not going to agree with everything everyone says, but if I can remain open-minded, man, I think that's the growth that can happen in that zone, I think is incredible.
Yeah, and like, it kind of cuts off your opportunity for new connections if you're only gonna hang out with or take in information for people with the exactly same perspective as you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So when you're going through and like you've landed on this connection-based coaching model, I imagine that there's a reason why you've implemented it altogether, as opposed to just force-feeding somebody information. Really try to get to know them, understand them, their pain points, kind of gives you a little bit more perspective on how to coach that person holistically. And I'm really curious to hear a little bit about what are like some insights that somebody could expect from that sort of coaching, as opposed to like, all right, this is going to be your macros, here you're going to go, and this is what you're going to do. What would you say, for somebody who hasn't experienced that, what would you say is the primary difference there?
Yeah, it's interesting. And what we kind of have, we have a hybrid model here at Key Nutrition where, most of our business is done virtually. However, the caveat is for a lot of people coming in, whereas I look at Cody's company and I think he hits a lot more of the advanced people, right? They know what to do. They got this. And I feel like for a while, our targeting message was towards more like the new person who wants to learn about macros, heard this from somewhere, doesn't know how to do it. A lot of the soccer moms are like our original, even the branding is this teal and purple, and it's brighter, and we tried to attract that. And when I say a hybrid model is that we have what's called full coaching, which is you get a phone call or preferably a Zoom call so we can make eye-to-eye contact every single week. And we go over everything just like you would an online check-in, but it's true connection-based. And then we do have an online-only option. And there's 2 different price points on that. And the reason I say all that is, man, I'll be honest. I still, when I went strictly just pure virtual after being in person, I missed that connection, man. The way you get to know clients, you get to by training them for an hour, sometimes multiple times a week. I mean, you bond with these people for life, probably, right? Like, you get to know them at a deep level. You start knowing their kids' names and their soccer game. Did they win their soccer game? And this stuff might not seem to have anything to do with losing weight or getting in shape, but it does because the buy-in and trust is there. And so I kind of say, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this hybrid model. We'll charge more, but you get more of a one-on-one touch. And again, even ideally a Zoom call. So we're eye to eye. And I think that, man, and both models are great. I'm not shitting on purely online, but that's kind of what separated us from every other online company was this high touch. And again, for someone who comes in that's got macros down, they need some accountability. They know what to do. And still, even then, if they can remain open-minded, we do have an online option only where, it's just check-ins. But for people who are new at this or maybe in a lot of pain or have 100 pounds to lose, like that accountability of showing up on a call and actually talking through it and teaching them, how to track macros and why. Okay, let me see your food logs and really going over this. But again, even deeper than that, having a few minutes to talk about their life, man, they start to know, like, trust, and respect you. And when that happens, I mean, then the information you give them, I mean, they take as gold. And so you have to be careful with that too. You're not giving incorrect information. But man, I just think this connection is what makes the transformation become even more special and real, because I got to know so many of their pain points. And again, not discrediting that you can't get to know a person through an online check-in too. But let's be honest, it's different than if you're actually chatting with them every single week. And so I don't know if that really answered your question either, but
I think it does, because I mean, I've had my share of online coaches, for nutrition. And the coaches that I had hired, I won't name them, but I've had some where it felt like they're just feeding me a spreadsheet, and it's like, if I don't stick to it, like there's something wrong with me, right?
yes.
Whereas, when I coached with Cody, and when I'm working with my coach now, it was very much like, hey dude, like things happen. Like I'm at the time my wife was pregnant, and I'm kind of slipping up here and there. And I'm like, man, having to run her to the hospital and all this stuff's going on and nesting. And so,
nesting is real,
right? Like the house is changing, and it's like, and then, just our dynamic surrounding food was changing, and it's like, I'm trying to diet, but I can't. It was terrible. So, and then just having somebody that is actually understands and is in your corner, and as your priorities might shift, they're also not so stuck to what they wanted for you or what you came to them for. So your priorities can shift because you're human, and that might happen. And then not having somebody be like, no, stay on.
That was a much more elegant way of putting it. I should just interview you. That's exactly right. The ability to pivot understanding your client's needs when there's a true connection there, when there's a deep connection and you're getting to know one, like that's it. Because listen, I can think that someone needs to get, to X% body fat or look X way, and that was their original goal coming in. But maybe somewhere along the line, they realized, you know what? I don't think I want abs, because me and you both have had abs. I think you probably still do. You got shredded to the bone, dude. It is a lot of work. It is far more work than people think. It is more likely you'll become a millionaire than have a six-pack. It is incredibly... Yeah, and I don't know where they got this statistic.
Sure.
Dude, when I heard that statistic, Sal DiStefano said it, and I'm thinking in my head, where in the hell did they poll people who got a six-pack? Like,
right, yeah.
But there's like 22, I think I read the stat that 22 millionaires. I don't know if there's 22 million people in America with a six-pack, but so maybe it's correct, but I've always wanted that statistic. I'm like, where the hell are you doing this? Or even when they say like 95% of diets fail, I'm like, is somebody taking a quiz at the end?
Yeah.
Filling out a survey? Yeah. But maybe they realize along the way that they don't want to tote around Tupperware. They don't want to have to sacrifice family outings, because there is a level of sacrifice, and me and you have both done it. And, for a short bit, like it's worth it, especially as a coach. And when there's a motive behind it, like a photo shoot or a bodybuilding show, there's this thing at the end. But when there's not for a client, they might realize that's not my goal anymore. I actually just feel really comfortable in my own skin. And I'm that's not where I want to go. And I've worked with a coach before. I was like, dude, I know I want to get like stage ready, shredded again. But I tried to tell him, like, that's not my goal anymore. Because I'm not competing. Like, I just realized I'm pretty lean as it is. And he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally I had to push back and was like, homie, I don't want to anymore. Yeah, bro, but that's your limiting belief. So I'm like, no, it's not, dude. I'm a new dad at this time. I want to prioritize spending some more time with my son than doing all of this right now. I was
the energy to play with him, and
brand new dad, not getting him out of sleep I should. And, and there's been other times where it was. Cody helped me through a photo shoot prep, and I love the way he handled it. Like towards the very end, he's like, do you want to get like, it's the most graphic way he describes it, but you want to get dick, what does he say? Dick skin lean?
Yeah.
Or do you want to just get lean? And I was like, I just want to get lean, bro.
But you know exactly what he's saying when he says it, though. So
I thought you were. He's paper thin, I know it's such a good description, because, and when I told him that, he was like, cool, okay. Then this is like, and he gave the plan of action to follow, like getting, dude, lean. I was lean for that photo shoot. I looked good. I could have been leaner, but at that point in my life, I was just like, no, dude, I just want to get nice and lean. I've been shredded. I just don't want to do that right now. And he heard me and listened to me.
Right.
And that is so important. And there is coaches out there that their whole motive is to make sure you get shredded so they have a good before and after to post, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like, that's a lot of the models for how somebody would acquire clients, and that's kind of maybe something that they could also learn from you is like how to curate content online. So, like, I'm actually kind of curious if the way that you approach content is similar to the way that you approach kind of these other things, because it seems like you're really meeting people where they're at with both like the advice, and then you have Sheena, and then you have like your tweet posts. So you have like multiple mediums and all this stuff. So I'm wondering if this is all kind of married to that same thing where it's like, I want to be able to connect with the people behind the phone. Like I have a certain person in mind behind the phone and how I'm delivering that content.
Yeah, dude, 100%. I think one of the most important things when you look at, producing content, and I would say this is, try to, and it's hard when that camera comes out, people get kind of weird sometimes, especially when it's video stuff. But, try to be the exact same dude you are. And I love that's why, your particular clips, going back to yours, like those are real life training sessions. Those aren't staged. And so you're being the same dude as you are in that training session. So it doesn't feel awkward for your client, but it also doesn't feel awkward for the people watching it. People can read through that shit. But yeah, I try to meet people where they're at. There's still some content that I post and I'm like, I am so bored of talking about this shit. But it's like we need to keep reminding, because as many great coaches there are, which I've been blessed to meet a ton of them in the industry and make great connections, there's still a lot of shitty information going around. There's still a lot of ads inundated that are gonna really, like, even though people are like, that's too good to be true. I saw one the other day that was for a fat loss gummy, and it said lose up to 20 pounds in 40 days. And my clients, and it was a girl that posted in her story. And of course, she's got a discount code for these fat burning gummies. And I'm like, what the hell? That's still a thing. Like, it shocks me, but people are always going to be appealed to that. So just continuing to post some of the shit that's boring to me now. But I try to have a wide variety of meeting people where they're at. And I have to remember, even though I'm bored about talking about it, us as coaches still need to put out the information. So it's still keep reminding the person out there that's still thinking the quick fix is maybe the better way.
Right. And I mean, with content online and with trying to serve clients, it's like, it feels like if I've answered this question before, then I just need to go a layer deeper, and then you get super granular, and then you lose the people that you were attempting to serve. So
Yeah.
like you either end up in like the trainer circle jerk, or like you're like over here just trying to do newfangled exercises that, you know, maybe not effective for clients, but it's still trying to meet them where they're at, but it's like entertainment factor, more like, oh, try this workout to flatten your tummy. And it's like, no.
Yeah, exactly. You know, on then, you know, it's obviously my Instagram handle is a sober bodybuilder, and you know, and I've told my story ad nauseum, so on tail, but I have 10 and a half years sober from drugs and alcohol, gnarly heroin addiction, left me on the streets. And, you know, I had somebody the other day, a friend of mine, that said, hey, man, and he was doing it out of love. I actually told Cody about it, and he was like, fuck that, dude. He said, man, I think you're still living off your story too much. And I said, no, dude, like, I don't shove it in people's face, but I do probably every 2 months try to make a post about that. And the reality is I've amassed, you know, my followers. I've gotten enough DMs from people that I know are also either new in recovery, or maybe they have long-term recovery, or maybe they're battling demons right now.
Yeah.
At meeting where they're at, it's not like I still hang on my story like I'm still that person, but it's you know what? You know, I'd like to give a message of hope and just remind people it's possible. Like, if a guy like me can do it, you can do it too. And so that is perfect example of content where I'm trying to meet some people where they're at. And that content is not going to resonate with everyone, because some people have never battled that. So it's just not relevant to them. But the people who it does, like, that means a lot to them. So again, it's kind of trying to get a diversity of content and meeting them where they're at and just saying, hey, listen, like, just letting you know you can do it too. It's not that I hang my hat on my story so much. It is part of who I am, but it's not who I am. But it's important for me to keep reminding people that, like, there are so many people who don't make it. So if I can remind you that I can make it, maybe you think you can too.
And also, like, just how far you go, like, every step further that you take shows someone how much farther that they can go, right? Like, you are saying, like, look at where I've come, and like, it doesn't need to stop here. It's like every little increment and every little step forward it's for those people.
Yes.
Right. And while it's for you, it's also for them. So it's like, recovery is a process, and then, like, thinking that you'll never get through it, or that, you know, you're bound to relapse, or, you know, or that you won't, you know, be able to do this, and you see you, and then you're like, oh shit, like, yeah, it can happen, right? And I'm sure that you've had, like, conversations like that where somebody probably came to you and did see, like, oh, this guy owns companies, he's doing this next level experience, he's doing all these things, he's like, you know, has a healthy relationship with his son. That that to me seems like it would be worth, that alone would be, like, worth sharing your story, right? Imagine if you just erased that now.
Yeah.
You erase all that opportunity.
Dude, no, you're exactly right, dude. The DMs I've gotten that over the years have meant the most to me are people who were like, hey, man, I mean, I shared a story it was about 2 years ago. It was August of 2021, and my divorce had just gone final, and me and his mom almost split. Well, we did split. Turns out she was pregnant. Got back together, and quickly, we're like, and I'm happy to report, like, we get along really good today. We're really good friends. And it just wasn't the right fit to be married, and so I was struggling, and I went to Mexico on a trip, and was just not in a good place, man. The divorce kind of hit me. It was final. Like, it was hard. Just like, I'd been away from my son. Like, I would see him, but, I wasn't there every day with him. Like, I had my custody split, but at that time it was even lower than it is now. It's carrying up and up to 50-50 come June, which I'm super pumped about. But, and I almost relapsed in a Mexican pharmacy. Was just not in a good place. That's 8.5 years sober almost. And, I bought some narcotics behind the counter. I was like, oh, let me see those. And without even thinking, I bought them. I got back to the condo, and this girl I was with was like, should you have those? What is those? And I was like, no, they're for a friend. Went through this whole rigmarole, dude. Was trying to, like, she tried to take them from me. I got super mad, and I was like, what is happening? Like, I was planning on doing them. And by the grace of God, like, she saw them. She was like, I don't feel right about this. I'm like, you barely know me. Get away. Like, they're not yours. They're for a friend. And I tell this whole story that I got back and I was super rattled, man. That was the first time, like, I had drugs in me and was thinking about going and crushing them on a counter and snorting them. Like, I was planning on it until she caught me going to the bathroom. Like, it was that close of a call. And I shared that whole story, and I actually did a whole podcast on it because it rattled me so bad. And it took me a couple weeks to kind of, like, get my bearings underneath me. I was like, wow, dude, like, that quick. And my history shows me once I start, I don't stop.
Yeah.
And so I shared that. And I shared that story on my Instagram, and I shared it, and I had some people be like, dude, I don't know if you should be saying that. Like, I don't know if that's the best. And the amount of DMs I got from that one post being like, dude, thank you. Like, I almost relapsed the other night, and I was wondering what's wrong with me. And this person only had like 60 days sober. And so, man, like, that whole story was just to prove a point that I think it's so important to be raw, real, and authentic. And even, like, people might think, some of my friends that were close to me, I was like, dude, I don't know if you should have shared that on your podcast and Instagram. And I was like, if someone thinks less of me because I almost relapsed, I don't really care. Even if I did relapse, one of the most powerful podcasts I listened to recently was, it was probably a year ago now, but Dax Shepard is in recovery, and he had like 14 years sober, and he came clean on a podcast that he'd been fucking up on pain pills for like 6 months, and kept saying he was sober, just like in denial, just kept using them, and like kept lying to everyone and himself. And he got clean on there, and I was like, damn, that was really vulnerable. And it was funny. It was like, it wasn't, I think it was only 2 months before that situation had happened to me. So that, I think just being real on your content, in your coaching, and when you can
struggles, yeah.
Vulnerability is the asset, not the weakness, man. And then I grew up in a house where I thought being vulnerable was weak, right?
Right.
And, my dad, great man, but he was just like, no, like, my dad never showed emotion. He just was like, hey, you just be a man, you man up, right? I'd hurt myself. He'd be like, man up. And so even with my kid, I'm not going to baby him like his mom. Jeez, man, he's going to be soft as tissue paper here in a second. But I'm like, but I also, even at 3 years old, I'm trying to be like, hey, dude, it's all good. Like, it's all good. I know you hurt yourself. Like, okay, let's look at it. I think you're going to be okay, but I can see you're upset right now. Like, I want to show him that being vulnerable and, like, being real and actually having feelings is okay.
Yeah. It's okay to feel those things, experience those things, and then move past them.
100%, dude.
So I have a question. So, you mentioned words like being vulnerable and being authentic, and I know that this podcast is kind of taking a little bit of a turn, but do you think that these are synonymous? Do you feel like they happen at the same time? Because I did find myself kind of like, I get a little bit philosophical at times, and I was like, is it really vulnerable if you only share your experiences after you've won? Right? Like, is that vulnerability? Like, you're not willing to really share the hurt and the pain of that experience as you're going through it, is that true vulnerability, right?
Mm.
And I think that you might be being authentic, but I don't know that you're being vulnerable.
Mm.
And so I have people that I am vulnerable with, and I think that it does take a certain amount of trust to know that is not going to be like thrown right back in your face, right? So like Brene Brown, she talks a little bit about like shame and shame triggering, and she has like her daughters had like this thing in class where they did this jelly bean jar thing, and anytime like
Yeah.
and they pull out the jelly bean anytime like trust is violated or something like that. Like that's her own little like thing. So I was kind of wondering what you thought about that, and I like, just because of how much you've shared so far, like what your thoughts are.
No, dude, I actually agree with you. And I love deep philosophical thinkers, man. Some of my best conversations are with people who are just like, but like, is it really? So I love that about you, man. I tend to agree, dude. It was interesting. When I first got sober and I started working with clients again, I was working for a company doing in-person stuff, and I was ashamed to tell my story. So it's like finally at 18 months, I got quote unquote vulnerable. But really what I did is I just got authentic and real, which I think are two different things, because I was scared to tell them, because if I told them, hey, by the way, 3 months ago, I was shooting heroin in a dark alley, like they might not trust me. That would be true vulnerability, is on it, like in the thick of the shit. Like my life still sucked. I was building back from nothing. I had a 505 credit score. I had I was living on some dude's couch. Like my life sucked still. Was taking the bus everywhere. That would have been true vulnerability, right? And I think that's what that moment that I think was defining for me is when I got back from Mexico. It was only about maybe 7 days later that I was like, I kind of got my wits about me, because it shook me up. I had not been that close since I was 3 months sober, and like hadn't really had a scare like that. And the thought just kept going through, like, dude, you were going to use. You could have ruined everything. Like, you're a dad now. Like, fuck all the business stuff. Like, your kid. Like, and that didn't even cross my mind when I bought him, and it scared me. But I definitely wasn't out of the woods yet. Like, I still was like, and I had this thing come to me, dude, in a meditation. It was like, you need to share this. Your secrets keep you sick. Like, and it didn't feel good, because I didn't feel like I was triumphant yet. I felt like, dude, I'm still super shaky. I was shaking when I did the podcast because it felt so uncomfortable. And to me, that's vulnerability, is like, despite your nervous system telling you, like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, you say it and do it anyways, because you know on the other end, it's going to be healing and freeing. And so that moment, I remember after I got done recording and I made a post, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe someone else looking in would think, oh, he's doing that for attention or whatever. I don't know what stories people concoct in their heads, but for me, that was such vulnerability that it like got me through that. I felt like on the other side of that, once I got done with that, I was like, I could breathe again, dude. Like, it's just like I was keeping this secret that only me and this girl knew, and it was eating me alive. And I was like, but if I tell people, will they judge me? Because I've made this whole brand off being a sober dude, and like, even though I didn't get high. And so that was different than just being authentic. Me just telling you about it now doesn't feel too vulnerable. It just feels like, oh, dude, almost 2 years ago, I almost relapsed. I was full-blown planning on it, and my plans got interrupted. But in the moment, it was vulnerability, and on the other side of that was a lot of healing. And so I agree with you. I think that, or people will be like, here's my worst pet peeve. Sorry to go off on a tangent about this. The warning vulnerable post. Like, to me, that's not even vulnerability. If you have to give me a warning, like, just be real. And you can see the difference when people are manufacturing vulnerability on Instagram for likes, comments, shares, and it's so, at least for me, I pick up on that so easy. And I'm just like, oh man, like there's something that just feels off about this. And I could be wrong, or I could be right. I don't know, but my intuition definitely tells me this is manufactured in order to get some likes and shares. And, to me, vulnerability is, if you feel like you're going to shit your pants a little when you open your mouth and say it, that's probably vulnerability.
Yeah.
If it feels super easy, that's just more being authentic. And I agree. I think they're two different things. And I think people misunderstand both of them.
Yeah. And like being authentic, I think you'd probably more likely be like if somebody was going to poke at you, it's not when you're being vulnerable. It's more likely when you're being authentic, right? Like Instagram air quotes authentic, right?
Dude, 100%. Yeah. Most people have a kind enough heart when they can, because you can tangibly feel it, right? I can feel when clients, and you have too, like over the years where, I mean, all of a sudden they just get real with me and they dump some shit on me. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
You can feel it from them. And there's no judgment. There's no, your heart just immediately softens for that person if you're in a decent human being.
Right.
And so, yeah, man, it's powerful stuff. And I think so often people, they don't get vulnerable, but yeah, they say they do, but it's after the fact. It's after they won. It's after they feel comfortable talking about it.
Yeah. And maybe that's a step to one day becoming vulnerable for some people, is like maybe first having the confidence to see that they can get through certain situations. But I think you have to have a certain confidence in yourself, in knowing that this isn't the end for you. For some people to feel like, okay, I can, like, I'm being vulnerable. This thing did happen. But like, maybe you don't, And I think probably in your situation, maybe you didn't, like, cause it did feel like, damn, this shit like just happened and it shouldn't happen to me because I'm, this leader and I'm X, Y, and Z. And like, I didn't even think about all these things that I could have fucked up like that. I think that's like that in by definition is like vulnerability, because like you actually didn't know that you had the skills to get out of there. And I think that's when somebody would kind of be a little bit more vulnerable. Like me being vulnerable about nutrition, like, guys, like this weekend I totally fucking fucked it up. Like that wouldn't, because like I have the skills to get that in control. And because like fucking it up, like we know that it's not fucking it up one day, and it's not like, guys, every day I struggle with food. It's like that's not what's happening. So like,
right,
vulnerable. It's like real things that like really happen, and that you aren't sure that you have a full grip on, and that's when you're sharing. Like that's you're sharing.
100%, man. Tell you what, if you want to build deep connection with people, first off, learn who you can trust, but get truly vulnerable. Like I said, if it doesn't make you feel like you're going to shit your pants a little when you open your mouth, it's probably not true vulnerability, and that's okay. You don't have to like manufacture something, but if you want a deep connection with human beings at a level you've never experienced, like start getting real. I would say your secrets keep you sick, and like so often that's what it is. We want to keep whatever's going on a secret, out of fear, what everyone else will say, think, judge, whatever about us. And so it was a good tangent we went on, dude. That's the deep shit I like talking about. You're like, give me some fucking value.
Right. So I guess, yeah, moving from that into what I feel like are some of the concepts or maybe the things that have allowed you to get a little deeper there. And I think that like for people who are trying to draw a takeaway, that understanding you have somebody that you can communicate with on this sort of level, like somebody that is willing to sit with you in your shit and help you get out of it, and have the skills and tools available to them to not just give you the X's and O's of macro, coaching, but like actually be like, I understand. Like I've felt these feelings that you're going through. Like, and while you might not have shared that exact experience that they're going through, you've felt things similar, where maybe you felt like a failure, and maybe you felt like you weren't good enough, or maybe you felt like you weren't worthy, and those sorts of things. So now I'm wondering, maybe it's in next level, maybe you do this with nutrition coaching. How do you begin to, once we know where somebody's at, how do you begin to build that person up? And what sort of habits are you looking for those people? Like, I know you mentioned meditation. Where do you start?
Yeah. You mean kind of on the, outside of just the training and nutrition, you're saying? Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I think that, I've kind of coined the whole, my whole coaching model off of this four-legged chair, right? Somebody said, how many legs is a chair supposed to have? I'm like, well, there's a bar stool that might have less, you asshole. People come to us for, this one I realized years ago, and especially with my experiences when I've been through it, They come to us for the physical health. And I think, but if you're a coach out there listening, adopting a similar model to really help people, it has been incredibly powerful. And that's what will separate you from just the person who does the X's and O's, right? Come to us for the physical health, that leg. But if the emotional, mental, and spiritual, those are the other three legs. If one of those is kind of wobbly, not a big deal. Like, you can still sit on that chair and you'll be fine. If two gets kind of wobbly, that thing gets a little hard to balance on. You can be a little like you're sitting on a yoga ball, a little more core strength, right? But if one leg just completely collapses, you're like, shit. So then you got to prop your leg up and hold up. And before you know it, if two legs, you're gonzo, right? And you fall on your face. And so they all affect each other. And I realized that, there's been times, and my last show prep was an example of this, and granted it was 7 years ago, but I went everything on that physical leg of the chair. And while I didn't almost relapse, I was completely miserable. I ruined a great relationship. I came home, her shit was packed. I was a selfish asshole, and I realized, like, that wasn't healthy for me. Although the show prep I did before, I kept all the legs intact, and it was a great show prep. I loved it. Something different happened on that one. And so instilling, I tell clients, like, listen, I'm not a therapist, not a psychologist, but what I can do is make sure there's some habits in place. And again, meeting the client where they're at to make sure every leg of the chair is somewhat optimal. Because as we know, what affects your emotional eating is your emotions, right? And your mental state. It's not just that physically you suck, or just a sheer lack of willpower. It's unregulated emotions. And so you're not, you're not taking care of these things. And so I try to implement, it's different with every client. And in the next level, there's certain principles we implement with everyone on each cohort. And that's meditation and gratitude journaling and an outdoor walk, because I think walking, especially outdoors, it's one of the few things that hits every leg of the chair, right? We've got the physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual for me sometimes, especially if it's a nice summer night, the sounds, the birds, like, it just reminds me just how powerful, like, the universe is, just this nature, right? And so, it'll look different with each client, but those are areas I really try to, and what we're also trying to do is, just telling the client, hey, stop being so stressed. That's not being a good coach. Why are you stressed? Like, figuring out that first, and then coming up with some tactics and habits to de-stress them. It's like telling a client, if they're not getting good sleep, we'll get more sleep. Why aren't they getting more sleep? Do we need a bedtime? Do we need to look at supplementation? Do we need to look at less screen time before bed? Doing blue light blockers, like a weighted blanket? Like, what do we need? Is it a colder room even? Like, silly things like that. And so it's the same thing. Really, it's not just about your mental, emotional, spiritual health. If you're doing something to nourish those legs, you're oftentimes going to get better physical health. You're going to have lower levels of cortisol. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have a better outlook on life. You're going to be happier. And so you're not going to be shoving your face full of Burger King at midnight because you had a bad day. You're going to make better choices with your food. And so those are a few of the things, dude, I like to implement, but it'll vary client to client.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And like some of the, some strategies can go like, you're like, oh, you're like, if you're literally just trying to be a problem solver and you're not coaching, you will find yourself probably just being like, oh, well, you're doing this, we'll do this. And it's like, well, why were they doing it? And they like you said, like, why are they doing this? And like, is it so that they can turn their brain off, or like, what is something they could replace that with, right? Like, to better solve that. Like, if they're getting screen time late before bed because they've got anxiety surrounding the workday and they don't want to, like, they just want to quote unquote decompress, so they scroll until their eyes get drowsy and then they fall asleep. If they fall asleep, that, like, why is that happening and what could we do instead? And then in your case, you might suggest like a nighttime meditation, or maybe reading a little book before you go to bed, or going for like a light walk.
Yeah, dude, 100%. It reminded me, we talk about this triangle in the next level experience, and in the middle of that triangle is your state of being. So just the state of wherever you're at, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, like whatever. That's your state of being. And on one side of the triangle is the fastest ways to change your state, either positive or negative, is you have the language you use, not only to yourself, but to others. So you can have a really good conversation with a friend that has depth and weight. You can say positive affirmations to yourself. You can not say negative shit to yourself or to someone else. Like, that's one way. The other way is through your focus, what you're focusing on. So obviously, where where your focus goes, your energy flows, right? So if you're focusing on the negative, you're going to get more negative. But even just like in those moments, I'll tell clients, okay, just in those moments, put on a really uplifting podcast or a podcast to get your focus away from the fact that you want to strangle your husband. Like, go, any of these things, right? Go read a book, do something to change your focus. But the best way to change your state of being is your physiology. That's the end, and that's why we feel so damn good after a workout. We get those endorphins going. But man, I tell you what, I'm stressed. I go for a quick walk. That shit calms down fast, probably even faster than meditation. And then I'll meditate after, and then I feel extra good. And then also when you're just sitting all day, that shit builds up too in a negative way. And so that's why I just love walking. I just preach walking, man. And I had a video, have a little bit of virality with this. It's always the dumb ones, dude. I've lost hope in humanity sometimes. It was a 20-second video of me saying that walking is exercise. And, anybody tells you different, hit them over the head with a tack hammer. And my whole point was, if you intentionally go for a walk, that's intentional exercise because it's no longer considered neat. But I was just saying, like, walking, let's not underestimate the powers of it. Man, the hate I got on that, because I have no interest anymore in virality, dude. It grew my following a lot, but I have no interest in doing that again. The amount of trolls that talk so much shit, like, walking is an exercise, you're a moron, go read a book, like, walk. Oh, yeah, if you got shredded from walking my ass, well, nobody, what about strength training? I'm like, literally, I didn't say to replace strength training. But virality is not the way to grow up, I've learned, because it came with a lot of shit.
Yeah. I guess, like, it's kind of interesting because, there are people that I respect on the internet, and then it's very easy on the internet to attack anybody for saying anything because it's devoid of context, right? And you have a 60-second video in which to instill a certain amount of context, and then that is going to, based on viewership, be taken out of context. So when they remove that context and they apply their lens, you're now an idiot. And that's the internet. And then if somebody like puts a stitch on it, and now like there's that, so like I'm like, whatever you do on the internet, somebody's gonna think you're an idiot, right? You could say strength training's the best thing, and unless you live in a strength training silo, you might be like, oh yeah, strength training's great, but if you're not there, somebody maybe from, I don't know, there's probably somebody in a yoga sector, I'd imagine, that believes that strength training is like, makes you all rigid and stiff and makes you not like mobile, even though that's not true. But like, that's just a belief in a system of operating, right? And so like, nobody said to do just walk alone to get shredded. That's not what you said. You just said it was exercise, and maybe you could strength train and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like,
it's so true, man. It's and I have a friend who, I thought you were talking about my friend who does yoga, because she's like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's going to make me too stiff. And I love being mobile. And I'm like, well, it's actually like been proven that's incorrect. Like, it actually can only help those things. But somebody will always, I made a post one time about the importance of strength training. And of course, just recently, and of course, I get people that are like, yeah, it says the meathead, you got to do cardio. I'm like, never once did I say not to do cardio. Yeah. Like, I just said strength training is so fun. If every American strength trained 3 times a week, we would be in even void of saying, hey, you should also watch your food. Even that alone would immensely help our obesity crisis and just confidence. Even people would be happier, even if they didn't lose weight. They would hopefully have a composition change a little bit. They would live longer a little bit. They have stronger bones. Like, there is so much. And again, on that post, people were like, cardio is really important too. I said, never once I say it's not, right? So it's void of context, and the keyboard warriors come out strong. And that's what, when we're in positions like we are, we're putting out content, like, you just know you might get some jackass that has something bad to say. And that's where being confident, and you go back to the vulnerability thing, and being confident in yourself. And there's a level of self-love and appreciation for who you are. You know who you are. You have to have a little bit of thick skin, especially, growing a following on social media and putting stuff out to the public where your account's not private. Because there's going to be people who say shit. And at the end of the day, that's why all these other tools that I do, the meditation, I've been a big advocate of therapy. All this shit has got me to a place where I can have pretty thick skin and I can take it, And so it's just more important to just continue the work, because you'll always get some shit out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like to think like, not just strength training and nutrition, but like everything that you were saying, whether it's like, confidence or everything has a percentage of your 1 rep max. And that's like the amount that you feel that you can handle or that you can handle, right? Everything is a perceived 1 RM. It has that level, right? And as I go through life, most of life operates at a very low level compared to my 1 rep max on deadlift, right? Like if I go pick up a box of, Fairlifes, like I got a whole case here for the gym, right? Like that relative, my 1 rep max is very low. And, but when I first started, that would have been a higher percentage of my 1 rep max, right? So the practice and confidence builds as I get stronger. And the same is true of, cardio. As I do more cardio, my ability to hit a higher heart rate goes up, because at first it's kind of hard to like build and sustain a high aerobic capacity. That goes up as I continue to train that. And then like you're saying, like your upper limit for what you're able to put out content wise and what you're able to handle, like lots of people would have deleted their Instagram after, or took the post down after what you went through in terms of like the attacks online and stuff like that. But that's because, like, that's relative to your 1 rep max. And maybe it's closer because of all the hate that you got. Like it tested you, but because of all the reps that you've built in, all the vulnerability and trust you've put into the system, all of this stuff, you've got a higher 1 rep max than most. And so I think
that's a really good analogy, man. I mean, because it's true. It did test me a little more, because I got accused of being too skinny on there, to being too much on roids. I was like, which one is it, guys? Can we pick somewhere in the middle? It was an exercise demonstration video, and they're like, yeah, says the guy, I have way bigger arms than this scrawny dude. And then the next comment was like, get off the roids, bro. I'm like, you guys got to meet me in the middle somewhere. One guy, my favorite comment, said, you look like a big dumb refrigerator with magnets all over it. And I'm like, I'm assuming the magnets are my tattoos, but I was like, thanks.
Yeah.
But again, it did. There was a moment there where I was actually praying for that video to stop, because as many nice comments, our brains fixate on the negative ones, right? Yeah. And so it started to get to me. I'm like, dude, this is not that controversial of a post. Chill. Yeah. And then I flipped into Gary V mode, and I thought, I truly felt empathy for these people. Like, I don't know what is so fucked up in their life that on a Tuesday, they wake up and they think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to scroll the real section, and I'm going to find somebody, a random stranger, and I'm going to take the time to type out, you look like a big dumb refrigerator with magnets all over it. To post. Like, that is so sad and broken. Never once have I thought, when I'm scrolling, to take the time to fucking write something negative to a complete stranger, even if I wholeheartedly disagree. Like, that is their platform. They can do what they want, and I will scroll by. There are some fundamentally broken in their lives. And, I got to that place with a lot of work of just truly feeling empathy for them, because that is not a way to live.
Right. Have you read the book Social?
No.
I'll get the author to you after the podcast, but in the book Social, they talk about why it's so painful when we do get like those sort of negative pangs, or we're bullied, right? It's the absence of somebody standing up for you that feels like affirmation to that statement, right? So you're getting all of these hate comments and like maybe somebody isn't directly under it responding or stopping it from happening, so it feels like it's kind of true. And so like you have to like you've done the mental work to know that that's not true, and that you're a great guy with an amazing story who's helped many people and inspired, you know, coaches like me to level up their game. And I want you to know personally that I appreciate everything that you're doing and that you continue to do, and that I truly respect everything that you're doing.
Dude, likewise, man. I appreciate that a lot, dude. Thank you. That's why us good coaches got to stick together, and you know, I appreciate what you do on there, man. So, and it's cool to see how good of a dad you are, and your kid is cute as shit, dude. But I love watching other men that are so involved with their children, dude, because he's you know, he's my why. You know, it's and unfortunately there's a lot of dads who just, you know, they think their role is just to go to work and just that's it, like, and just, you know, being a present father is that's the ticket, man.
Right. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate your time, and that you were willing to jump down all the rabbit holes with me.
Dude, that was fun. It was one of the funner ones I've been on because we went in so many different directions. I liked it.
Awesome.